of Exhibit A, or B, A, I think. It's a copy of it's in your handout. You have included the and the electrical substation parcel, and I know I attended all the meetings in regards to the 6 RFPs that were drafts. And so we started researching on who actually owned that parcel. The Army responded after contacting Senator Boxer, and Senator Boxer forwarded the FOIA request for Warren, Michigan, the Army, big Army thing, command base there, and we got an answer back, and I have, and I've talked about this before, I have 2 reports that are not included in the information that you made public. So I can make that available to you.
I just want to more with the RFP process.
Well, it's certainly gone that direction, and I just had a brief kind of sidebar with CEO Egan. And based on the way that the item was, and the question I had was, is this within the scope of what was agendized and what the topic was? Or is it beyond the agenda?
I think Supervisor Hammond wanted a presentation.
Yeah.
From RFP.
I know. But the way it's worded.
I'll clarify that. You have on the agenda receive information.
She's right.
So,
Wait a minute. Mark the date. Mark the time, lady.
But I'm right?
Yes.
It's the first time you've admitted I was right. That I will put on the
One in a
calendar.
row.
I will put on. We sent a non-responsive to FOIA request to Colonel Lassen, and that's why we went to the exchange, because it was important that if you tell the public you're not including the electrical, then the electrical substation, and then you include it on page 7 and you're selling it. I've made several presentations on who actually owns that. After I got the information back from the Army in Warren, Michigan, I then went to ELMA to see what their opinion of who owns that parcel. And it turns out, I think at this point, because Plymouth Sierra hasn't responded to any of my correspondence, is that we don't know who owns the actual land. The equipment, though, ELMA says that's on that little 1 acre, the equipment belongs to Plymouth Sierra. That was, no research was done on that because within an hour I got this letter from ELMA. So what happened, the chronological facts are in 2003, ELMA transferred this property to Plymouth Sierra for $1.25 million. And in 2003, ELMA, according to their people over there, they stopped reading the meters at in Hurlong and Plymouth Sierra. And then, so the Army said in 2004, ELMA still owned this parcel, or owned the equipment on the parcel. It's not delineated that between land and equipment, but the fact of the matter is the equipment is the only thing that is owned by somebody other than the county. The problem you have right now is this was issued on September 23rd, and you're expecting bids Thursday, but you have literally deceived the public. The people that are bidding on this RFP think, and you've totally given them the impression in writing on page 7 that you're selling that parcel. All the information and the charts and everything we've put up, and pick A and then pick 3 and then pick 2B and everything, you decided, you put it in the RFP that you're not selling that electrical substation. And yet this is exactly what you did with the Hurlong one-stop. You just say in public that you're not selling the one-stop, and then it's included in all the documents, the deeds, and everything when you transfer the property. This, you're going to have to redo because you're not selling the electrical substation. So you've got a dilemma. You lied and put in the document that you're selling something you said you weren't going to sell, and you don't even own the equipment. So I don't know what you want to do with it, but I'll tell you, if you go ahead and give it to Pizzulo on Thursday, I don't know what you're going to do. Maybe a lawsuit? Civil lawsuit against the county? This is just deception. And I'd like to know when you're ever going to do the right thing. I mean, I know you're profiting from this sale. But the profit that you saw in Hurlong has never, in 14 months, never surfaced. And you're not going to make any money on this. Maybe one or 3 or 5 of you will make money on this. But it's just, you got to start doing the right thing. And this RFP is trash right now. Because you can't sell something that you claim, one, you don't own, and 2, you've already stated in public meetings, even in a document in the RFP, that it's not for sale.
I must say, personally, I don't have any expertise to comment on, so if either of you have anything to say otherwise. I mean, I think it's,
I think Ms. Spencer is mistaken. And the substation is not contemplated to be transferred.
Parcel 7 is included in the exhibit as being sold. Parcel 7 on page 7. You've included it, just like you included the one stop.
I'm looking at page 7, I don't see that.
I presume she's referring to page 7 of the RFP, is that right? Is it page 7 of the RFP?
Of the exhibit. Parcel 7.
This is
7.
we'll have to review that legal description.
Pretty
If that's the
plain,
case,
it's pretty plain English.
if that's the case, it wasn't intended to be included.
Neither was the one stop. We don't want it to happen again.
We'll work out with the surveyor.
Warren Anderson, Planning and Building Services. Ms. Spencer just made me aware of this. In preliminary responses, that I don't see that item as being part of the RFP, but rather part of the exhibit that went to the general plan conformity before the direction to staff for the RFP release. I might be wrong. I got to look at it, but that's at least
This is the RFP that went to the public. I can go and
Right,
pick
right.
What
it.
you're looking at is an attachment to the RFP.
Well, this is on your website as the RFP. If you go in and you can print this out right now, or you can bring it up here.
Right. But what you're looking at is an attachment to the RFP document.
why don't we go ahead and agendize this for its own deal of report back,
Okay.
so, because it is, you know, point raised, and we do need to address, make sure it's correct for you know, especially with the timing of all this, we need to make sure it's good.
Make sure this time you include the library books in the.
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
That's another story.
All right. Thank you for bringing that to the attention. Yes, so okay, is there any other public comment? Okay. Thanks, Tom, for arranging
Oh, yeah.
that presentation.
Yeah. And
I would like Mr. Holliver to give a brief dissertation about the progress we're making on having the
I'm sorry.
congressional,
Oh, I thought you
Mr. Holliver, congressional representatives tour the Army base. We made some steps in that direction on Friday.
We did?
Yes, we did, with their staffs. I'm putting you on the spot.
Tim Holliver, Congressman Federal Office. We had a meeting Friday with the University of Nevada Medical Center on another issue, of which was invited Senator Heller's office and Congressman Amity's office, our neighbors to the south and east. And during that meeting, more or less at a recess, it was discussed that they would like to come back and tour the base again. We invited them to a tour about, I'm going to say 17, 18 months ago. Senator Heller wasn't able to make it, but he sent his chief of staff. Congressman Amity made it along with Congressman LaMalfa. Very well received by the base. The interesting thing is that neither of the Nevada congressional delegations had ever set foot on the base to our knowledge. The entire time Lori had been there, she wasn't aware of anybody from Nevada, but the congressional delegation setting foot there. Prior to her time, they may have. There's some animosity there because Senator Reed helped move the munitions demolition to Hawthorne. Little things like that. Really, this meeting we happened to have Friday was a very successful. We're looking into the possibilities of trying to find ways to staff rural hospitals and rural clinics, medical clinics, and give further assistance in lieu of a new law that was passed this year to assist the VA, Veterans Administration, and let them go to outside sources to assist various veterans. And we made a lot of steps on this, and the university was able to determine that they would be able to assist in staffing with residents. And I learned today that the licensing from Nevada to California on a situation like this is very doable, which I haven't had a chance to tell Tom yet. So we're really making some interesting progress. And this came up originally over the Doyle Clinic that's been closed, I think, for 5 years, isn't it? And also the problems of the Cedarville Clinic and Hospital. They're virtually bankrupt and just on the edge of teeter-tottering to stay open. And these facilities need help. They can't afford to staff them the way the criteria is required for licensed physicians, et cetera. They just don't have that kind of income. They can't get that kind of income. But it'll be like 25% of the cost to put a resident physician in who would be under the direction of the entire university staff. It's really an outstanding thing that we're working on. And we're not going to let up. Tom and I have talked about, we have a person volunteering that's done a lot of work of this nature professionally, trying to find a way that we might actually be able to hire her to work and get Nevada to help with this. This helps Nevada just as well as California. So the Modoc County, Siskiyou, Shasta, Lassen County, and Washington County, and also Wyoming. What's the other one in the east, Jim? Cedar Moment. But it's something that we're working on diligently. We've got 2 people in our office in D.C. doing research for us. I think Tom's got some maps with it. He could kind of pass around. You can see what we're gathering together on it. It's not a joke. It's very, very serious. So if I can try to answer a question, we'd like to. This is all preliminary, obviously, at this point.
Yeah. And Tom covered it pretty well in his morning report.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Okay, very good. So I think we'll move along to our 2 o'clock item D2, Sheriff's Department.
Mr. Chairman, John Meehl, Undersheriff, I appreciate the board's consideration of moving us to a time certain. We had the grand jury here for the annual tour and inspection this morning, so we had a busy day. The first item we have today is the annual fleet replacement. This is very similar to what we bring before the board every year. We make an assessment of the entire fleet, look at all those vehicles that are at or more or over 100,000 miles that need to be retired and replaced during the year. Last year we actually made a very sizable purchase, like 16 cars. So we got everything very caught up last year. So as you can see, this year it's a very small purchase in comparison. The only 6 that we have slated for replacement this year are the ones in front of you. 5 of them are for the sheriff's office, 1 for probation. The only other department that would have been eligible this year was planning. They have a vehicle that is still in very good shape, just hit 100, and they decided to hang on to that for one more cycle. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions about the pending purchase.
How many vehicles do you have total?
Do we have total?
That's a lot.
We do. These the ones
You guys maintain them yourself?
we do. So the fleet, part of the fleet program, Tom, is we have one fleet manager who, with some inmate help, conducts all the lube and tune and tire rotations, brake replacement. I mean, all of the basic maintenance. And so we're very fortunate that with the kind of longevity and miles we get out of these cars, because they get driven pretty hard through all kinds of terrain. And the ones you see here, there's 4 of these are going to be patrol cars, 2 of these are going to be, one will be for the patrol captain, one's a detective vehicle, but the rest of them are patrol.
Thank you. We're all really familiar, with the fleet program, so there's no other questions for Aaron?
Well, I noticed all the ones you're retiring are Fords, and then the majority of the ones you're replacing are Chevy. Do you have a preference, or is that just the way that it comes?
So it really, year to year it changes. The Department of General Services puts out bid specifications for all different types of classes of vehicles, and all the various manufacturers bid. So this year, ironically, the Chevy Tahoe got the bid. This has been the first time in a while. Ford Expedition was on the second tier of the bid, and frankly, we were going to get the Fords because the Fords were less expensive. The Fords this year were $29,600. Chevy Tahoes were $34,500. When we were working with the vendors, getting another quote, it just so happened he had 4 of these Chevy Tahoes that were 2014s on the ground that were $900 cheaper than the Fords. So full-size SUV, full patrol capability, truck frame, tow capacity, all the capacities and stuff were similar. So we really don't have a brand whose flag we fly in particular. It's as long as it meets the bid spec and it meets our need, then after that it's about price.
I can tell you it's significant. Aaron pointed out to me we're getting those Tahoes for basically $29,595, and the list price for them is $46,600 over there. He's marking them down $17,000.
And they're still making money at that price.
2014. 2014
Yeah.
It's huge.
2014 blowout.
Yeah. I mean, like a layperson walking off the street would be lucky they got it for $45,000. They're doing you a favor.
Okay. Is there any, just in the interest of our 3 o'clock airborne, we're going to keep moving, so is there any public comment on this? Okay. So what's the pleasure of the board? Approval. Okay. All right. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thanks, John. And then moving right on to item D3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a continuation. We've been working on this project for, it seems like an eternity now. But we worked this through the summer. We put this out to a request for proposal. On September 23rd, the board unanimously awarded the bid to CFMG, the California Forensics Medical Group, and at that time you asked that we start working on formalizing a contract both with CFMG and then potentially with our existing healthcare providers in case we needed an extension because those contracts were set to expire December 31st. So we're happy to report both of those are complete. It'll be the pleasure of the board. I'm not going to rehash all the merits of this program. I do want to say this has been a mountain of work. I sincerely appreciate all the help that we've gotten from County Counsel's office, specifically Andrew Houtt. He's here today. Andrew he did a ton of heavy lifting for us. This is a monstrous contract for us. This is a seismic shift in the way we do business. And Andrew went through this with a fine-tooth comb. And when he and I got to get back together to try and pick through the fine points and make sure that we had all of our bases covered, it was great. Actually, it was a great conversation. It's clear to me that Andrew really combed through it. And it was nice to hear his perspective because he's looking at this just on the merits of the document. What does this document do for us? What's the service we get from the vendor, and what can the vendor expect from us? Where my position was a little different in that I know where we are today versus where we're going. So I appreciate Andrew. I think this will be a nice move forward. We will be back in front of you next week with an extension for Meadows and company because we won't get these folks on the ground by January 1st. They're working hard to recruit. But they won't officially start pulling the triggers until this is ratified by the board. They know that you are the final say on this as it stands here. You see, this is the numbers are in place. This is a 3-year initial term. Actually, the very first part of this runs about 18 months, just because we want to get this cycling on the fiscal year, because it will make it easier to deal with. CFMG does fixed rate or variable rate. We worked with the CAO's office there. I think we worked out a very it came out as good as it could. We could have went with a variable that's on a CPI rate for medical expenses. Obviously that's flexible. It's unknown. It would be very hard to plan for. And working with Mr. Egan on that, we asked CFMG to lock us into a fixed rate that essentially is based upon a 10-year average of the CPI. And it's just to give you an example, Glenn County locked in at 4 3/4 per year. We were able to lock it in at 4.2. It's easy to plan for. It's easy to budget. That was one of the things the auditor asked at the agenda meeting. Well, how do you know that in 2.5 years from now it's 1.178? Well, that's how we know, because it's a fixed rate. It's something we can plan for moving ahead. So with that, I know Mr. Houtt came today. If you have any questions about the legal side of this or the work that he did, or obviously the fiscal side, we all worked on it.
Yeah. We, again, it's something that has been hashed out here over several meetings, and you stated it was a monumental contract, and I mean, that's an understatement. It's good, well done. I mean, this was, some months ago, was, right, bit of I don't even want to say a mini emergency. It had all the makings of a massive emergency. But we managed to get through it thanks to you guys, and I'm happy to see a permanent fix here. So well done. Yeah.
What kind of time frame before they take over?
So we'd originally talked about it as early as January 15th, just button up against Christmas and New Year's. They're worried about having a good full-on boots-on-the-ground presence by then, so it'll probably be Feb 1. Next week we'll be back in front of you to try and get a 1-month extension with Meadows and his group, so we make sure we have a very smooth transition. We don't have any break in coverage. And obviously, this covers us and juvenile hall, and we've talked about that a lot. But this does, and so will the extension you'll see next week.
And Dr. Meadows is good with the 1-month extension.
Yes.
All right. Supervisor.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that at the recent counties conference in Anaheim, this group had a group that the vendors there, and I had a chance to some of the safety, I can't remember his name offhand.
Dan Houston.
Dan, he said to say hi to John for me. So we had a chance to talk about how this thing has come about, and I think they're excited about expanding into our area. They got some pretty complicated contracts in service deliveries in some of the other areas, and even though we may look at it as being extremely complicated, they feel that their ability to serve our needs is going to be one of the better operations that they've been able to tackle. So they're pretty excited about that. They see it as a real opportunity for a success story. They think they see coming into our area and proving the model they have working, opening up the doors to them really to move into a lot of the rural counties, because this is the trend where it's going to go to, especially with the AB 109 shifting of inmate populations back into the local levels and these kind of facilities and turning this into, basically territorial prisons, and with all the healthcare related costs associated with that, it's going to be something that, that's their opportunities are going to be really expanding and opening up. So they're hoping to make this to be the test for opening up into the rural areas. So it's kind of nice talking to the guy. He actually I think Richard walked a little later on, he gave me a pin and he gave Richard a pin. So when you sign the contract, make sure you use the pin. So just want to remind Richard.
In the interest of time, I'm going to go to public comment if nobody has any.
I have one other comment that I'd like to make, and this is about the CFMG contract, and I know you've got a time issue, and I'll move right along. It's about the CFMG contract, but it's more about Amazon. And I think it deserves some recognition, and I'll say that, I'll be specific. When I was interviewed for this job, I was asked during the process about why do we farm out so many different kinds of legal analysis tasks, different contract attorneys. This is a classic example of why we do this. He is a skilled practitioner when it comes to contract law. He understands and appreciates what makes up a proper contract, what can be defended in court, and what can be effectively advanced by plaintiffs.
Or be used against you.
Absolutely. And he has, in the CFMG context, for this case, which probably represents the single largest contract that this county has, or one of them at least, but also in an area that represents significant liability exposure for the county. We're talking about caring for people that can't go out to care for themselves because they're locked up. He had occasion to reach out to people that he's acquainted with in the law practice to get feedback on this particular document. He was that motivated, and I'm pleased to have him working for county counsel's office. He's done an outstanding job, and I hope it continues. I really believe.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you.
The other thing working to his credit too is that the contract reviews came back in a more timely fashion than we've had in years past, and that's always been
No
a complaint.
question.
And since Red has been engaged in
Yes.
doing that, we haven't had any of those kind of complaints.
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to make a comment on this item? Unless anyone has any specific for Andrew, we'll go ahead.
I would make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that the action is to adopt this contract that's been vetted.
Yes.
That would make that in the form of a motion.
I'll second it. You make sure we're
Very good.
Approve and authorize the CAA to sign.
to approve the contract and authorize the CA to sign it.
Ready. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
$4 million expires in June 30th, 2018. I'll be more.
And the chair votes aye. So unanimous. Thank you. That's all for you.
Thank you.
I think that's it, Everett. Oh, no, you're
Yes.
The recognition committee, of course, invites those who have been called aboard to the Christmas party tonight, 5 o'clock. I'll be out of the office Thursday, Friday, and see you next week.
And we would like to see you at the party tonight if you can all make it. It'll be fun for you. Well, fun for us.
Richard, unfortunately,
Be absent at your own peril.
Richard, would there going to be a RCD thing on the board?
No. Appointments for board, potential appointment for board.
All righty. If there's nothing more, then we'll stand.